here?
Yeah, I know. I don't know if you went over this with Alex and Jeff the other day. I
Uh-huh.
know you talked about Tracker with them, and I know Josue uses it. Is a very heavy user, uses it daily. Is there anything like need to know about that?
Are you thinking more like on the database side or more like on the just on the configuration usage side? Because I
I
know
know.
you have
I remember having like every 6 months having to add
uh
users or like maintenance on it,
yeah.
something like that.
So so all that is still um required, right? Like that's still
Okay.
going to be a thing that's going to come up. And that's because a lot of that stuff is tied to the start and end dates for the jobs. So that was the issue. Well, not an issue, but that's just the way the program works, right? One thing I did go over with Jeff and Alex, though, if I can type correctly, um, again, is on the database side of it for the tracker database. Kind of the most common things that Josue's had to call me about has to do with this job class rates and I
Yeah.
believe the employee job classes. And since these have a start and end date, typically the issue has been just because of those overlapping situations.
Hmm.
Um, and the same thing with the job class rates, like either something's overlapping or something is causing an issue there. And usually it's specific enough that Josue can point me towards like a user as an example, and then maybe I'll run a couple queries in here, try and examine the data to see what looks off, and then typically for those like when I have needed to make adjustments on the end dates, if it's just like one or two records, I'll just edit them directly, or if it's something a little bit different, maybe I'll use a general update query or something, but usually it's just one or two and I just kind of come in and adjust them manually and then that fixes things. The If you recall a couple months back there was that issue, I think was it Gina that reported it to you or
Yeah, Diana. Yeah, some one of the students wasn't appearing, and their old G number was tied to like someone who was.
yeah.
Yeah.
So there was like a do not use type address and I don't know
Mhm.
if they had become an employee or how it was, but essentially there was another G number already present for him. Um, it was a different G number, I think, but the same
Same
username.
username. Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. And in any case, the structure for this is that the G number has to be unique, the username has to be unique, the email has to be unique. So if any of those kind of overlapped improperly, then the problem with that one though is that it was actually uh, breaking the import process, right?
Yeah.
And that's actually the process. I'm not logged into the server right now, but it's a process on the PHP scripts virtual machine here. I don't have Visual Studio Code installed on that server, um, so basically after it gets the data for that query and it starts processing it and it attempts to do this insert down here or update. Well, it couldn't do an update because of that unique kind of constraint being um, hit. And so when it ran that query, it was running into an error here, but it would stop essentially in the middle of that loop and it would never finish, the rest of the records.
Hmm.
So what we were noticing was that like some of those newer students, I think, weren't showing up as well, right? That was like a side effect of that issue. Um, but kind of once I ran it manually, I was able to see the error in like more detail and like which user it was, affecting. And then I was able to backtrack and go check the database and make that correction that was needed. So
Yeah.
um, yeah, so that one kind of involved a little bit more layers, but the typical one that Josue kind of brings up is just it's a little bit more straightforward with the job classes and the job rates, just needing those minor corrections sometimes. But I do have that in the documentation too, though, somewhere
Oh,
in here.
oh, okay.
Yeah, the I think here under the tracker notes, I might have it in there a little bit. Hopefully, I put some detail. That file looks kind of small. Yeah, that's not going to help you. Um, no, there was a different one I probably put together. I definitely feel like I reviewed that to some degree.
Mm.
That one's a high level thing. It's not that one. Um, oh, I think it might have
Oh,
been in the one for Alex that I wrote a little bit more detail on it. I keep on losing my place on that one because it covers a couple different topics in one. But I do think it's in this one. Yeah, so this one that I wrote for Alex when he kind of asked some of those specific questions too, I kind of mentioned that same thing about those tables and those columns and all that good stuff. So
oh, cool.
so that's kind of where I talked about it a little bit. Yeah, the hard part about having a lot of documentation is just knowing where to go to find the answers you need once you actually need to use it. So.